All right, so we're gonna do a review slash analysis um of something that really caught my eye the other day. I was thinking some ideas on a new project that I wanted to work on later on this year, and I wanted to listen to some ragtime. And I thought about the king of ragtime, pioneer of ragtime, and I wanted to talk about Scott Joplin. Now, you guys probably heard of this song that I'm getting ready to play real quick. Fair use, YouTube. Fair use. Now, that song, I used to hear that in all kinds of movies. And I thought about the same thing I was thinking about with Thermo King. McKinley Jones, they said that he didn't have money. He wasn't filthy rich. And I'm thinking, how the hell could that be possible? So, with Scott Joplin, and in a way, this could be a foundational Friedman playlist, but I'm going to kind of keep it more of an analysis. But I might put it on two of my playlists. But Scott Joplin was born in Texarkana, Texas, and he died in New York City. He was 48, so he was fairly young. Composed more than 40 ragtime pieces, one ragtime ballet, two operas. That piece you heard right there, Maple Leaf Rag. Um, and he considered ragtime to be a form of classical music, meant to be played in concert halls. Um, he didn't really, he did not like the performance of ragtime as honky tonk music in saloons. But when you hear the music in a lot of like westerns and all kinds of different, they play it in a lot of saloons. You see what I'm saying? So he didn't look at it as just keeping this among a bunch of just a bunch of drunk ass folks. Just hey, yeah, ragtime. No, he's like, man, this is classical music. So um he began publishing music in 1895, and Maple Leaf Rag brought him to fame as steady income. Um Then they say he moved to St. Louis, and 2 years later he scored his first opera, and it was confiscated along with his belongings for non-payment of bills, and now is considered lost, which is a shame. So in 1907 he moved from New York City to find a new producer for a new opera. So this dude. He wasn't making music to just be played at the bar. You see what I'm saying? So now his music was rediscovered in 1970s. Um, then uh, it says it returned to popularity in the early 1970s with a release of a million-selling album record by Joshua Rifkin. This was followed by Academy Award-winning 1973 film The Sting, and that featured several of Joplin's compositions. So it looked like he was married 3 times. First to Belle Jones, then Freddie Alexander, and then Lottie Stokes. So, you know, uh, I'm just looking down at I'm looking down at his trying to see if any of that music, and it says he moved to New York City, which he believed was the best place to find a producer for new opera. He married Lottie Stokes in 1909. He couldn't find a publisher. He took the financial burden of publishing Tremonisha himself in a piano vocal format. And then in 1915, as a last ditch effort to see it performed, he invited a small audience to hear it in a rehearsal hall in Harlem. They say it wasn't staged right, with only him on the piano. They say it was a miserable failure to the public, not ready for crude black musical forms, so different from the European grand opera at that time. So it sounds like Negroes want to hear some white folk when it come to opera. I don't know. He couldn't get no backers. He walked out. He suffered a breakdown, went bankrupt, discouraged, and Tremonisha went unnoticed, unreviewed, largely because Joplin had abandoned commercial music in favor of art music, a field closed to black Americans. And it wasn't until the 70s that the opera received a full theatrical staging. So that's pretty sad. But I'm just looking at this, and it says legacy. Joplin and his fellow ragtime composers rejuvenated American popular music, fostering an appreciation for black music among Europeans by creating exhilarating and liberating dance tunes. So like they said, the revival of it came about in the 70s. Now listen to this. This is the sad part in a way. This guy, Joshua Rifkin, he released a recording called Scott Joplin Piano Rags. It sold 100,000 copies, and it became Non-Such, which is a classical label, first million-selling record. So where'd all that money go? Like, did he have kids? Any descendants? Because I'm looking right here, and I seen something about a copyright. Well, let's see here. It's a copyright attorney, Alvin Deutsch, worked with Vera Brodsky Lawrence to make sure the Joplin estate owned the rights to his work. Okay. Deutsch negotiated with the New York Public Library to get Tremonisha copyright and got the Joplin estate $60,000 in the 70s when someone infringed on it. But somebody is making money. Somebody's making money off of this, man. Somebody's making money because it's been around a million. I think it's Public Works. The author died in 1917, so this work is in the public domain in this country of origin and other countries. Okay. Man. Yeah, man. Let me see if it's in public domain. Because somebody's making money with that music, man. It looks like all of his published piano rags are in the public domain except for Sylvan Swan Rag, which was not published until 71. So it don't sound like his people is getting it. But one other thing I want to bring up, and this is probably another reason why brothers had to come up with stuff like this. This is a PDF that JT the Bigger Figure wrote some time ago. I got a hold of it because he was creating a whole bunch of, like he had a magazine. This guy's responsible for a lot of artists, especially a lot of artists in Atlanta. The Bay Area, specifically Oakland, Richmond, Vallejo, all of that, Northern California, a lot of those artists they didn't focus getting major deals. They sold stuff out to Trump. So remember when I was saying, if you can't pay for a certification that expensive and you ain't got no money, you might have to go to somebody that got some bread. You might have to go to a hustler if your family or whatever. So you might have to go to somebody if your credit ain't right or whatever the case may be. But you make sure you pay them back. You see what I'm saying? So this brother wrote an entire table of contents, a guide on how to sell your records. Now, remember, this was before we had streaming. Streaming, you got people that's getting almost nothing per song, but you could easily access the music. And the first thing that I noticed was he says, "Welcome to Black Wall Street. I want to acknowledge all those who lost their lives in 1921 Tulsa, Oklahoma to the race riot, started by envious devils who didn't want to see our people prosper, independent, and free, so it was bombed." And that's true. The whole community destroyed in one night, over 3,000 lives lost, but they don't want that history uncovered. My people live on through our generation, and through hip hop, we spread this Black Wall Street to the rest of the world. So that was his label name. So he went straight off. He was on code off the jump saying, look, man, so even though he may not be on the biggest major labels, he's getting that bread. 400,000 CDs sold on his Get Low Records. So he's basically giving people a blueprint. He's talking about things such as a 50-50 split. Now, keep in mind, y'all, this is well before the streaming. This is a world that you probably, now he's talking about networking. Networking could be your biggest asset. That's how he was able to work with all these different people. Then, he's talking about you could come up with a one t-shirt design and eat deliciously off one slogan on a shirt. He says, I came up with ain't no game like Filmo game and made 10 grand in one day and invested. And I only invest, he said, and I invested only had to come up with a slogan. Some of the typos mainly all, but besides the point. So he's breaking down different concepts, stuff that he's been doing. Being a good speaker can get you through a lot of doors. Closing the deal. How to leave the street life but keep the hustle. Vision. So he got his son there. He helped Young Buck. I'm just saying, like, there's hundreds of dudes that came from that Bay Area game. Now, there was something that had caught my eye. How to launch a label with a compilation. So he was working with several different people in order to sell his product. All right, now let's look at this. Independent versus major label. Major labels give you 10 to 15 points from the sale of an album, which equals about 125 to 195 album per sold. But they deduct all costs of putting your album together from your cut, not theirs. Even in the independent distribution game, we get 70% of the wholesale price, which is $11, leaving about $8. All costs are also deducted, but you have more room to play with your profit. Major labels throw you away when you're not hot, no feelings at all, just business. Being independent, you keep dropping until you make it, until you're tired of dropping. You see? Now, there's another thing that I saw. Trying to see here. 12 tips to running an independent label with no budget. Like he threw a billboard up. Them ain't cheap. So now he's breaking into the plans. Projection and sales chart instruction sheet. $2,700 investment. 20 CDs sold to just 50 stores from our retail guy will give you the power to be your own distributor right from your home. So he's saying $2,700 investment. You get 1,000 CDs, $8 wholesale. That's $8,000. Minus $1,000 manufacturing. So that's your investment. $7,000 remaining. $500 in graphics. Now you got $6,500 remaining. Spend posters and flyers, put $1,200. Net profit $5,300. Now, remember what I said about the Amazon boycott. If you got all these black authors or all these black folks that stream music, in my new project, I'm going to have some music to stream. If y'all go to my playlist, you can listen to it early. And I'll explain how all that came together much later. Now, if you're going to boycott DEI on some DEI BS, if you're going to boycott and you're saying, well, I'm going to boycott, you're hitting other people by default. So that's pretty much, you're pretty much doing the same thing that you're saying you shouldn't do. Well, we have to include everyone. Everyone can't be hurt. We all have to, because remember, under the cause of DEI, everyone else gets more than what we do. So we're fighting for 5 to 10% while they get the other 80 plus percent, because you're worried about a moral highway and all that BS. But you're not getting help in the end. You're really not getting help in the end while you're damaging other black business owners at the same time with your boycott. Because you're not just boycotting, you're boycotting the distributor. But if the distributor is distributing other products, you're hurting them. And your attitude is, well, they got to get hit too. Well, that's why we voted couch. Because everybody going to get hit then, right? We're talking basic math here. Because everybody's been eating off the DEI pot except us. This is documented by the Department of Labor. The sole beneficiaries has never been us. So what are we fighting for? Let's go along to the next piece. Sign an artist and a producer. Now, things are different because, like I say, things are streaming. But they're not doing just big deals anymore like that. The art of negotiation. This is a notable case study. Put an autobiography there. You could get paid off stuff like this too. PDFs. Master P released his first album the same time as I released Put It on the Map. So you see where Master P got the game from the Bay Area. That's notable. You see the old cell phone. That's an old school. Them was super expensive. They was real young back then. So now he's talking about an independent deal where he said he signed in 95, he signed a distribution deal with Priority Records for $500,000. That allowed me to release records but maintain ownership of publishing and master copies of my music. It was agreed that if the deal didn't work, there was a clean break with no strings attached. At the same time, another Bay Area artist signed to Priority by the name of Percy Miller. He would later become known to the world as Master P, CEO of No Limit Records. Master P had relocated from Richmond, California to down south to reign for the next 4 years at the top of the game. I love watching P destroy the top dogs in the rap game because he came from our roots, the Bay Area rap game, and he took damn near $500 million. You see what I'm saying? In 1995, I purchased $100,000 studio and put it right in the middle of the hood. He brought over Masterpiece, Silk the Shocker, E40, Sell It Sell, Mac Mall, RBL. Started shooting movies. It looks like he got a movie camera in 98. He funded all of this on his own. I just remember this PDF came out with an album with Juvenile. Independent. Bought some masters from Nas. I'm just kind of getting at a point. Help Fabulous get on with some stuff. You see what I'm saying? This is an interesting case study, y'all. This is an interesting case study. But the overall point, I was kind of looking at with Scott Joplin and stuff like that. Okay, did technology hurt us when it came down to some of this, to streaming and music? And looking at that PDF and how much they were getting per CD, it did. Now, one thing somebody could say is, well, with streaming, Scott Joplin's music is now global. Whereas before, you'd have to get the tape and the, and the vinyl and things of that nature. Yes, eventually it would have spread. But I always think about the descendants like, okay, this stuff is being played everywhere, TV, and stuff like that, everywhere. And I just had to wonder, like, man, is the descendants, are they getting their fair share? But if it's public domain, can you still not get a copy? It's public domain. It's for the public. So can you still not make money with it no more? If that's true, let me look into this a little bit more. I don't think that's right that the kids still shouldn't get paid. I think he should still get paid. But I don't know. You need, like, what's that one dude that got like some kind of forensic auditor or something. I forgot the dude's name, but it's a brother online, and he was basically talking about how he had to get money for Big Pun's people because Fat Joe didn't want to pay, and he's a forensic dude. Like, this brother's good. He gets artists paid because the labels and it's a dirty game, so it's something to kind of look at though. But we'll keep it going.